Before we start, it'd be great to introduce you to Bible Society. Not everyone has heard of us, or they might know a little bit about us, but we are one of Britain's historic charities. We were founded in 1804 by William Wilberforce and other members of the Clapham sect. And we have a charter to encourage the wider use and distribution of the scriptures. And that's what we've been doing since 1804. We make the Bible accessible for people who otherwise can't access it, whether due to translation, physical Bible accessibility, or more recently, particularly in the West, because they perhaps don't understand the Bible. They struggle with what we might call Bible engagement or Bible confidence. And that has been an increasing focus for us over the last few years, is helping make the Bible accessible, not just in the hand, but in the head and in the heart. It's something that we believe is the priority in the future for Bible mission in the 21st century. We're a Christian organisation, and we're proudly non-denominational and interconfessional, and we work with people of all faiths and none. We're part of the United Bible Societies Fellowship. I can never remember how many Bible societies there are around the world, but what I can remember is more offices than Coca-Cola. So we are all over the place. We work with Bible societies who are large and well-resourced, like the American Bible Society of Australia, as well as Bible societies who might just be one or two people working in the toughest places in the world it is to be a Christian. We are global, and we learn an awful lot from the Bible societies around the world. We also invest significantly in research, so I'm going to talk to you about the Quiet Revival in a minute, but there are various other things we've done. We do a lot of stuff that's internal, we don't share out loud, but some of the stuff we have published that you can find on our website. We did a piece of work a few years ago around the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II and attitudes to the place of Christianity in the Bible in that public mourning period. We actually counted up the number of times the Bible was present in that week of mourning, and it was a lot, and I think it's probably the biggest public scripture expression that we have seen for 100 years. What was really fascinating in that, spoiler alert, was that the general public actually did find it appropriate. The Bible still has a place in our mainstream culture today. One of my colleagues, Yin, wrote a really lovely piece of work on the Chinese diaspora and their needs around the Bible and the changing shape of the church as a result of the growing Chinese population. Really encourage you to read that. It's a really lovely piece, and it's been really impactful. We've just released a piece of work called Digital Nations. I don't know if you're aware of this stat, but your average teenager is far more likely to be visiting Roblox on a daily basis than their local youth club. So when we're thinking about places to meet young people in mission, we have got to be thinking about the digital space. And Digital Nations provides a framework for thinking what is the nature of digital space and what is the nature of digital mission, and how do we better support digital missionaries today. So do encourage you to look into that. I am going to speak a little bit about the Patmos Initiative, but basically the Patmos Initiative is a global study into the place of the Bible and Christianity around the world today. We surveyed 91,000 people in 100 countries and asked them, what do you think about Christianity, the Bible, and religion? And we did a huge piece of work to identify different audience groups, identify different what we call clusters or contexts for mission. And it's our hope that this research will catalyze a global Bible engagement movement. I share it with you today because I know that you are a diverse group who are dealing with communities from all over the world. The world is here in Britain, and this research is as useful for those of us in Britain as those who work directly in contexts overseas. But moving on to the Quiet Revival. I don't know about you, but I feel like there's been a lot of talk about Christianity this year, and it wasn't just around the Quiet Revival. We started back in January with the Times reporting that Gen Z were half as likely as their parents to identify as atheists. We then heard that Gen Z are driving a rise in Bible sales, and this has come up quite a few times from various data sets, this rise in Bible sales, and I have heard about from many booksellers saying people are walking in and asking for a Bible, like it's a really weird thing. We've had books like Lemorna Ashes, Don't Forget We're Here Forever. It's a really wonderful anthropologist reflection on Gen Z finding Christianity. Fusion did some lovely research with students. 33% of non-Christian students are interested in discovering more about the Bible. I'm told Baptist Union are having a bumper year for baptisms, which is great. Catholic churches are reporting a rise in adult baptisms, people going through the rite of election, particularly young men, I'm told. YouGov's tracker on belief in God. I know the colours aren't great if anyone's colourblind, I'm sorry about that, but it's also showing that there is a rise in belief in God among young adults, different source to that Times article, so we're getting this from multiple sources, which is really interesting and encouraging. This chart in the middle at the bottom there, this is from a magazine called The Economist, who did an amazing piece of work looking at what they described as the halt of secularization in the West, drawing on loads of data sets. This chart is my favorite. I know we all have one. And it looks at the rise in Google data that shows an increase in searches around the Bible and Christianity, that it started to accelerate in 2020. It's really interesting to me because, like the Bible sales, this isn't attitudinal data, this is behavioral data. This is people doing something, not just telling me on my survey what they think I might want to hear. And that chart in the corner is from Evangelical Alliance and their Changing Church research, which is basically showing a net increase in reported attendance at evangelical churches. This moment has many names. Some people are calling it a quiet revival of interest. Others are saying it's a surprising rebirth of Christianity, a changing of the tide. What I want to say to you is it doesn't matter what you call it, something's happening, there is something changing, and it's a fast-moving moment. What I've learned over the last 6 months is kind of the things that I was just seeing as a little thing on a horizon 7-8 months ago, and now a big thing. And so we have to be paying attention, and we've got to be learning quickly, and we've got to be exchanging ideas quickly, because it is a moment, and I cannot guarantee that if in 5 years when we repeated this, we get the same data. So the Quiet Revival is according to Bible Society. If I can give you a bit of methodology, we started back in 2018. We wanted to do a kind of baselining study about what was the place of the Bible and Christianity among adults in England and Wales today. So we went to YouGov, who are Britain's probably most well-known polling agency. They're certainly very reliable. They're used by academics and business leaders and the government and policymakers. Basically, anyone who needs to make a decision will consider making that decision based on YouGov data. So we think we can make our decisions based on YouGov data too. And we went really large. We surveyed 19,000 adults. This was because we wanted a really good degree of statistical reliability, but also that so we could break down into really small groups if we needed to, like particular Christian denominations or young men living in London, for example. That was really interesting. We got some really good data out of it, and it showed us kind of what we expected to see in many ways. We did a little pulse check on it in 2022. So we do survey parts of the survey every year for various purposes, but 2022 was the full survey again, and this time we went to 3,000 adults. It was a bit of a weird data set, to be honest. It showed a lot of uncertainty. So people were answering our questions in a way that was different to previous years, mostly because they were saying they didn't know, or they neither agreed nor disagreed. And what we've come to understand that as was almost like pandemic shock, because what we were hearing around that time, certainly 2020, 21, and when this was done in 22, was just uncertainty, and that stuff had been thrown up and churned around, and people just really weren't sure whether what they had thought before was what they still felt now. So we felt we needed to go again, and that's why we did 2024. This time we went big again, 13,000 adults, and this is where we find ourselves today. So there were 3 key findings from the report that I'll take you through. Number 1, the church is growing and changing. The church is socially and personally impactful. Church going is good for you and others. And that there's a growing spiritual openness, particularly among the young in England and Wales today. A change in the vibe shift, something is changing. And that there is challenge and that there is opportunity for the church in this moment. So, back in 2018, this chart shows church going by age. And any sociologist of religion would have drawn you a chart that looked just like that. It shows you that church-going is more common among older adults and much, much less common among younger adults. That was fine. That did what I wanted it to do. Then this came through, and this is the chart. This is 2024, and it's the chart that trended on Twitter. It's the chart that made headlines around the world because it shows a challenge to that long-held assumption that the church is in inevitable generational decline. It shows that church-going has gone up among young adults, or at least more young adults in England and Wales are saying they go to church at least once a month or more, which is just remarkable. But what I want you to pay attention to is the U shape. Okay, so this isn't an even rise. This is happening generationally. So we've got this uptick among the over 65s and the under 35s. But in the middle, the bottom of the U, is kind of stable. Like there's no real statistical change there. So kind of have a think about who's in positions of power in society at the moment. Is probably people in that age group, whether that's journalists or politicians or policymakers or church leaders to some extent. So we have to be thinking kind of both who's connecting with who here, but also are those people, particularly in the church, properly resourced to deal with the changes that are coming. We also saw a change in the profile of the church. So 32% of churchgoers aged under 55 are from an ethnic minority, compared to 6% of those who are older to them. Overall, people from ethnic minorities make up about 16% of the population. So we are a diverse church. The active church is diverse, and we need to take that really seriously, especially at the moment. Equally, the church is changing in terms of its expression in terms of denomination. So our top three traditions are still the Anglican Church, then the Catholic, and then Pentecostal. That's come up to the third biggest expression. But when we look at our young churchgoers, or the age profile, this is where we see that just 20% of those aged under 35 are Anglican, but 41% are Catholic and 18% are Pentecostal. So we expect to see a bit of a change if these trends continue. Oh, sorry, there's a chart missing. There we go. The bar charts there, I haven't released this data before, but I wanted to share it with you because I think it's also useful for us to have a look at Anglicans and Catholics by age. So the green bars are the Anglicans there. And what you can see is this massive just overweighting among Anglicans who are aged over 65 there. So while the Church of England is growing according to their own statistics, and ours point to stability in a more optimistic way, I think we will kind of still see perhaps decline there unless something changes. And also with the Catholic Church, again, we've got that U shape coming through, which is really interesting. It's kind of that's the difference there, is this bump up among young Catholics there. We also saw what we would call vibrant faith, confidence in the church, and that was a bit different to what was in 2018. So weekly Bible reading had gone up across all denominations and expressions. The average among churchgoers for weekly Bible reading in 2018 was about 54%, and it's gone up to 67%, which is amazing. Belief in God remains really high within the church. What we call Bible confidence, I'll talk a bit more about that, had gone up nearly everywhere. Loads of Bible hunger from these young people who are in church. Loads of Bible behaviors as well, like regular reading, talking about it with others. And this is really important because some people have put it to me that this growth in church is not about belief, it's about community, that people are lonely and they're kind of going for a nice cup of tea, and that's great. And I'm not saying that's not important. Community is very important, but it's not alone. Young people are engaging with the Christian faith in churches, and they do believe while belonging. Yeah. So the key take home here is the church is growing and is looking more engaged. And this is a really important thing to hold on to, is that while we're seeing these big changes going on in terms of the cultural space of Christianity, what we would call nominal Christianity, those who say they're Christian without practice, is actually decreasing. The strength of the practicing church seems to be increasing. So this is different to what we've been dealing with for hundreds of years, but it's not a bad place to be. One of the really interesting things, we do mention it in passing in the report, but we're going to do a bit more work on it, is when we did our well-being questions, which I'll talk about in a moment, those who are Christian without practice are the most unsatisfied in our society. Yeah, really interesting. Okay, so the church is impactful both for individuals and communities. We don't start our surveys asking whether you go to church and do you believe in God. Believe it or not, that does make people leave your survey. So we warm them up. We warm them up with other questions, and these are a bank that we often use. They're based on various other really good surveys like the Harvard Wellbeing Index. And what you can see on this chart in the dark green is that churchgoers are more likely than non-churchgoers to say that they're happy with life right now, that life feels meaningful, they feel hopeful about the future. They're less likely to say they feel frequently anxious and depressed. And they feel close to people in their local area. And this one is particularly important for young men. So there's a very strong gender effect in the data. You can read more about that in the report. And young men who go to church are far more likely than young men who don't to say they feel close to people in their local area. And I think that's really interesting. When we think about what's going on with young men, and there's some concerns sometimes in mainstream conversation about that, we do know also that there is a crisis of male mental health and that young men are lonely. Our data suggests they're finding something in church, and I think this is something to celebrate. For young women, it's actually the frequently anxious or depressed that's the big one there. They're also making a difference in their local communities. I don't need to tell you guys this, but churchgoers are more likely to give regularly to charity, to volunteer their time, donate to a food bank, and take part in local environmental improvements. Churchgoers are making a difference in society today. I'm going to move on to what I call the brutal facts. These are always in my presentation. They're not going anywhere, even in a good news story. And this is the reality of our situation. 79% of adults in England or Wales hardly ever or never read the Bible. And most of them don't care, they don't. About 67%, 7 in 10 or so, say they're not interested in discovering more about the Bible. And the root cause of this, I believe, from our other research, is actually based in relevancy. They simply don't believe the Bible is relevant to them as normal people living their normal lives. Don't worry about the detail on this chart, but what it shows is a series of what we call relevancy attitude statements. So at the top there, you can see that 60% of the population say it's good for children to know at least some stories from the Bible. 53% say it's important to know about the Bible because it's helped shape our culture. But when we get down into the realm of the personal, the Bible is relevant to me personally, just 25% agree. So the Bible has some cultural relevance, maybe some relevance for society, and this is what we saw in that Queen research I mentioned earlier, but when it gets to the personal, no. Most people in this room will have had a time when someone has shared the Bible with you in a way that has made you feel seen and understood, and it spoke to your personal circumstances. Most people in this country never experience that. And I want you to hold on to this relevancy thing, because it really is kind of the core barrier. For most people, the Bible is dusty for maybe official occasions, but not for ordinary people like them. But nonetheless, things are changing. Throughout the data set, we see a warmer spiritual openness than we saw in 2018, and it's particularly the case among young people, the 18 to 24-year-olds. So 56% of non-churchgoers would be happy for a Christian friend to pray for them, which is great, really high, but that rises to 63% among the non-church-going 18 to 24-year-olds. 31% of non-churchgoers would go to church if invited by a friend, a little bit high among the 18 to 24s. And on that question only, these are people who have never regularly attended church. So these are non-churchgoers who don't know church, but could be open to an invitation. And 18% of non-churchgoers are interested in learning more about the Bible. This rises to 25% among 18 to 24-year-olds. That wasn't the case in 2018. It's even higher among non-church-going young men. And you can maybe draw your conclusions about why. And the key thing I want to put over here is that relationships, local churches, are key to meeting this spiritual openness. So 19% of non-churchgoers say that if friends or family recommended the Bible, they'd give it a try, but that drops to just 9% of non-churchgoers if we ask about celebrities or thinkers recommending the Bible. Social media matters, and it is a big part of driving this spiritual moment. But when we ask people, they talk about relationship. And it's so important that our local communities are equipped, that churchgoers are equipped to have these conversations and to meet the questions that people have. I haven't got it on either of the slides, but we also saw a rise in the number of people who are saying it's a good thing for Christians to talk about their faith with non-Christians. And the age group most likely to say that are the 18 to 24-year-olds. They just think it's good to talk about things. It's not just Christianity, I think it's probably everything. So what would help the spiritually curious? Number one, something that helps break the Bible down into manageable pieces. Something that helps relate the Bible to everyday life, that relevancy thing I was talking about there. Talking with people who hold similar beliefs to me. This is really important. We know from our wider research that spiritually curious people who are otherwise interested in learning more about the Bible, they really don't want to be preached at. Sorry. They don't want to be told what to think, and they fear that we're going to do a bait and switch on them in that kind of space. So there's something here about creating safe and open spaces where they can be allowed to explore the questions of the Bible and faith in a way that is them in the driving seat, but with us journeying with them, that in proper interpersonal relationships there. Oh, hang on, I wanted to get that. Exploring the Bible through art, films, TV, or music. There's something here about the experiential, the head, creativity, not being told what to think again, an opportunity to talk with Bible experts. That is certainly important for some. So moving forward, where do we go from here? Well, we think in the report we talk about various recommendations, but I guess I pull these down into two priorities. We need to prepare for this spiritual curiosity. Before I move on to the Bible discipleship side of this, on the spiritual curiosity, I think it's important to get a sense that we are in a new landscape now, and the questions that people are asking of faith are different to what they might have been 20 years ago, particularly under the height of the new atheists. My sense is, well, those apologetics questions of, is there a God? Can I be moral without religion? What about pain and suffering? Those things still matter. Those questions are never going away, but they are not the primary question anymore. We're now in more of a spiritual marketplace where there are lots of spiritual ideas that are being considered. We've seen a rise in things like light magical practices on TikTok, crystals, astrology, as well as exploration of other religions. So the question is not, is there a God? It's why you're God. And that is a really different question to what was being asked. And as churches, we need to get really familiar with this spiritual landscape and understand the language that people are speaking, and that people might be having various spiritual pit stops before they get into church, or they might be continuing to explore those things while they're in church. I don't have the answers to this, but I'm just saying the landscape has changed, and we need to understand the nature of the new landscape. We also think it's really important for churches to get really serious and really good at Bible discipleship. So the good news here, the vast majority of church-going Christians are interested in knowing more about the Bible. They want to know it more. It's 86%. Young Christians are a little bit higher on this, about 90%. Older ones are a little bit lower, but most people are in this bracket. Like, it's fine. Sometimes church leaders can fear that church-going Christians are put off by the Bible. Our data doesn't suggest that. We do see quite significant hunger. But nonetheless, there are some challenges. 32% of churchgoers say they're not confident they could find relevant passages in the Bible. The difficulty in finding passages which apply to everyday life at that point in life. If experiencing emotions like jealousy, what part should I read? That's from a focus group. A third of churchgoers say the Bible is difficult to understand. Lots of language is heavy and old-fashioned. It does feel like a chore. And this language of chore is really interesting to me, because I don't think it's controversial to say the Bible can be difficult. It is hard to understand. It does take work. But people don't mind challenges. We take on challenges all the time, whether that's learning a new skill or running a marathon. But chores are hard. No one likes chores. So something about moving the Bible from chore to challenge that I think is important in the church. And I would say that a lot of churchgoers around the Bible can feel almost shame. They wouldn't necessarily name it as that, but they wish they knew it better. They wish they could be the kind of people who quote it regularly or meditate on it or pray with it. They just don't know where to begin, and that can be really heightened by issues like dyslexia or other reading difficulties. We also see some warning signs in the data there, particularly among our young adults. So the yellow bar here is church-going Christians aged under 35. And what you can see here is that compared to older Christians, they are more likely to say that their confidence in the Bible is often shaken by the media and British culture, that their faith can be undermined when they read or think about some parts of the Bible, that they have less confidence in the Bible than they used to. I have to stress that the young people in the survey are really Bible hungry. Like they want to know it better. It doesn't matter what denomination they're in. And remember, these are a Catholic majority kind of church, if you like. They want to know the Bible. But there is a fragility in the data set that suggests to me we really do need to act. Young Christians are also more likely than older Christians to say that they find it challenging to find appropriate Bible resources and guides, and that they find it hard to find people to learn from. Resourcing and relationships, those are the key things we need to address here. And I think my sense is, over the last few months, talking with various people about this research, is there are new pathways into the church. So one of them is a kind of spontaneous spiritual encounter. Sometimes people just turn up because it feels right that they should go to church, and they don't necessarily even know why. I've also heard about people having dreams of spiritual encounter, which is really unusual in kind of British Christianity, but it's come up a lot, and people ask me about it. Like, I had a journalist ask me, "Do you know that people are having dreams?" I was like, "Oh, yeah." So there's something going on there. But the other thing is online discipleship, and this is what I hear a lot of, is that people are turning up to church almost half-formed because they're being introduced to Christian content via algorithms. And then the algorithm will give them a bit more content, then they might find some podcasts, and they might be listening to that. So they're coming in with quite deep ideas. And that is really interesting, because it means that kind of seeker-sensitive approach might not always be appropriate, or at least they might need something deeper more quickly. But there's also an interesting challenge of taking people from that very personal discipleship process into the messiness and lived reality of church and Christian life and community. So there's a lot of learning to do there, but it's relationships and resources, I think, are the things to take away from that. So what would help churchgoers get more confident with learning more about the Bible? Number one, something that helps relate the Bible to everyday life. This is something that churchgoers over and over again say that they struggle with. Many churchgoers have a very personal relationship with the Bible or Scripture. It's very closely related to how they encounter God, whether through the traditions of the church or in their personal lives. But this idea of the Bible going out into their everyday life as an accountant or something, that's where they struggle. So something that helps relate the Bible to everyday life. Talking with others who hold similar beliefs to me. That's on the survey for the non-churchgoers. So it's fascinating to me. It makes number 2 for the churchgoers. And I think there's something in here about that safe space. Christians often feel worried they're going to be wrong when they talk about the Bible, even in church spaces. So it is really important we build confidence in people as well as confidence in the Bible. Something that breaks the Bible down into manageable pieces, opportunity to talk with Christians, probably very similar to that second one, and opportunity to talk with Bible experts. People really do want to learn. So, knowing I was coming to speak to you, I had a little think about what does this mean for ecumenical spaces and organisations like yourself. So this is quite early thinking for me, but I'd really love to learn from you as well. As I said earlier, the current moment is emergent, and it is developing in multiple spaces and in multiple ways. And sometimes these things overlap and sometimes they don't. So we just do need to really keep our eye on what are the different features of the new landscape. There's this changing demographic profile, increasing diversity, and we do need a global perspective on understanding the church within England and Wales. This rise in experiential, so the Pentecostal and Catholic, there is also data around rise in orthodoxy. It's not come through strongly in our data, but that's fine. It's coming out elsewhere. Is there maybe something about conservative expressions of Christianity? We don't know yet, but it's one of those things to look at. But I think my sense is a reshaping of institutional church and structures and the place of the institutional church in British society, and cultural Christianity doing something quite different. So it's this smaller active church that's diverse, I think is the thing we need to hold on to there. This issue, as I've mentioned, around online discipling, what are the theological implications of that? Are we going to see more theological fluidity between expressions? But really, I think most importantly is around this desire for community, connection and meaning, both among Christians and the general population. And so openness to work across communities and structures, I think is just going to be really keen for a healthy and flourishing church in the future. So I've mentioned very briefly about the Patmos Bible Attitude Survey, thinking about the global church and the local. Please do Google it. It's a huge report, and I'd need another 2 hours to go down through it. But it's a really great data set. If stats aren't your thing, maybe you will enjoy the podcast, which is me and Andrew Ollerton, who is the author of many books, including our own The Bible Course. We're talking about some of the themes I've unpacked for you today, but bringing in guests who are church practitioners and really learning from people on the ground and trying to put practical tips in place so that churches can respond well to the missional moment. I think episode 3 was just released, but there'll be a whole series. We had Justin Briley on episode 2, so that was fun. A really easy thing for churches to pick up right now is our new edition of the Bible Course. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it in this room, but it is a course designed primarily for churches, but we know others do it as well, that helps people understand the big overarching story of the Bible and helps locate us in our moment within that big story. We've done lots of research around it, lots of impact measurements, and it consistently seems to help churchgoers, whether they are new to the faith or lifelong, understand the Bible better. And even if you've done the course in the last few years, I really would recommend you try the new and updated edition, because we have improved it quite a lot.